Okay, here we go.
Oh my gosh, another day, another episode.
Back at it.
Oh my god, you look great.
Thank you.
I love this color on you.
Oh, thank you. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, what I heard was, you love this color on me. Is that
You're
right?
correct. Thank you so much for listening to what I had to
Oh,
say.
you're so very welcome.
I feel so received.
Thank you for expressing yourself.
I love that. I love the way we effectively communicate. I think communication is one of our strongest relationship
I agree.
qualities, attributes, pillars.
Yes.
I potentially over-communicate, which I love the opportunity to do that.
I would prefer that you over-communicate rather than under-communicate. So
I agree with that. I don't want to suppress anything.
No.
I love to just like...
Just word vomit.
Yeah, sometimes I say things that just have no relevance at all. And then you'll catch me, it's like, what? And I was like, I was just talking out loud.
Just talking to yourself.
Talking to spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking about communication today.
Yeah, communication.
Yes.
It's one of our pillars.
It is one of our pillars.
To recap for people, we have 5. We actually have a foundation, which is play, and then 4 pillars of trust, communication, empathy, and truth. Trust and truth. So communication is one of our pillars. And why is that?
Oh.
Tell on the mic, why is that?
Because for me at least, it's so integral to a healthy relationship. The ability to communicate truth. Like it's honesty. And whether that be communication within myself or communication with another, the ability to have that dialogue and have that understanding between each other. So I know where you're at, you know where I'm at, and yeah, I feel like that speaks into why that's important. What about for you?
I feel like communication gives voice to whatever's alive in the moment. And I see a lot of value in that. And even knowing that what I communicate in one moment might completely change 30 seconds from then. But always having the access to be able to share that helps create a more solid foundation. It could be emotions, it could be thoughts.
Okay.
It could be anything, but it gives my body a voice. Communication gives my body a voice. We talk about verbal, nonverbal communication.
Yeah.
It also gives a sounding board for my mind and what's happening maybe in the mental arena. And I think that just helps foster safety.
Okay. Yeah, I really like that. And I resonate with that because as someone who's very much, or has been very much in his head a lot, the ability to communicate externally what's going on internally is a really healthy aspect that was missing from my life. And I noticed the difference that it makes being able to express things.
Yeah, and I love that. For me, it's amazing because we might feel into the fact that some energy's off here. We're very energetic beings. And this goes into like the nonverbal communication where we can see signs in each other that something's off. One of us is feeling disconnected in some way, and communication gives us the opportunity to bring the other person into our experience. So we're not processing it on our own, and creates that sounding board that's like, yeah, I don't actually know what's going on, but I'd love to share with you. And then it's beautiful for me, for instance, because I get reflections from you that kind of help me see my blind spots and go, okay, what's actually happening here? Communication gives me that soundboard and that mirror and that reflection to then go, okay, cool. This is actually what's happening.
Okay, so it sounds like it's an opportunity for you to further the processing of whatever's going on.
Yeah, outside the confines of my own mental limitations.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So it allows you to expand in a way that you wouldn't be able to do so solo.
Totally.
I love that. And I think what's also useful to point out is part of our communication is going, I recognize, I've picked up non-verbally that something is perhaps misaligned, and I wanted to bring that into conscious awareness. Is that something you want to discuss?
I love that.
Right.
I love the permission piece. I was thinking about that so much actually while I was getting ready for our recording this morning, how important asking questions like that are. Because it's great to just ask, and then gives that person sovereignty in a moment to go, do I actually want to share this? Without feeling like I have to.
Yeah.
And just how important just consent is in general. In both of the independent work that we do, you in tantric hypnosis, you need to ask permission to go into that space with them, right?
Yeah.
Like, are you willing to drop into this hypnotic state with me?
Yeah.
I have to do the same with my clients. Like, are you open to letting me point out the blind spots with love and compassion for you, knowing that they might not always be the softest of commentary.
The easiest of conversations.
Yeah, it might be a little rough to digest, but the permission piece is like, okay, I'm here for this.
Yeah, and it's so important because it's asking that person to bite into what is about to be exchanged. It's not, I'm throwing this at you and do your best with it. It's like, do you want to engage with this? No? Okay, fine.
Yeah.
When you're ready, I'm here. Or yes, I do. And great, let's explore this together as a team.
And that's what I love. Like, it's a team. It is a team building sport. Communication is a team building sport.
And even when it's something challenging, like it's, I'll use an example for me. Oh, I've got this thing going on in me right now, and I don't know how to deal with it, but I know it's present. And being able to communicate that, or you to acknowledge it and bring it into conscious awareness for me. And it's not a case of, fix this now. It's like,
you're killing my vibe. Can you please fix whatever is happening here?
Sort it out.
I do say that jokingly, but never actually serious. I was like, hey, can you give it there?
What you do ask is, what do you need to come back to love?
To love, to come back to your heart.
Yeah, and that's such a nice communication to receive, because it's, whenever I receive that from you, it's okay, I know I'm safe, and I know that I'm supported, and I can, even if I don't know what that is yet, I know that I'm not alone. And that's nice.
Thank you for saying that. What I'm hearing you say is that when I ask what you need, or I ask you, like, what do you need to do to come back to your heart space, that makes you feel safe and supported.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether I know the answer or not.
Yeah. And I'm always like, when I do that, I'm like touching your heart and I'm rubbing your heart, because that's such a somatic thing also, where not only are you hearing the words, but you're feeling the energy of me that's like, hey, I'm here. What do you, what would you like out of this moment? Yeah.
And that really, really helps. It's such a beautiful communication to receive. And the invitation for communication. Like, when you're asking me that question, you're inviting me to communicate with you.
Yeah, I want you to open your heart, essentially, if you feel in the space to do that.
Right, yeah. In those moments where, in those moments where I don't know the answer, it's not that I don't want to communicate. It's that I don't know what to communicate.
Yeah.
And equally, there are those moments, and I think you've had this as well, where I've recognized that there's something, and you're like, yep, I recognize there's something, but I don't feel like I want to communicate about it right now.
Yeah, and that's okay too.
That's a communication.
Yeah.
It's bringing into conscious awareness that there's something there, and that's okay. And it's been communicated at a level.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm owning it, I'm claiming it, and maybe I'm not open to talk about it. It reminds me of this moment when we were in Tulum, and I knew that my energy was off, and I knew that your energy was off too, and we were kind of in this like attachment style, like avoidance energy. And I remember you bringing it up, and this is like so classic. You bringing it up, and it's like, I'm noticing that your energy is a bit off, and internally I was like, oh, God damn it. Like, I didn't want to get into it. And I could feel just that energy where this is why I feel like our relationship is so strong. And also communication is one of those like epic go-to pillars, is because in that moment of you bringing it to light, there's nowhere for me to hide behind my shields or whatever it was I felt that I was avoiding. And in general, what I really was avoiding was just like, oh, I don't want to process this right now. I just like want us to clear it independently, and I had space to offer that. And it was just funny, like in that peak moment, it landed at the time that you asked me, and I rolled my eyes and I was just like frustrated. It was like this voice that was like, you have nowhere to run. You need to own this. I was like, okay, I'm frustrated. Okay. And I just vocalized it in that moment. And then we had the conversation and we cleared it. And then at the end, I was like, thank God for that. Because otherwise, maybe I would have carried that energy lingering for hours.
Yes.
You know, it's not necessary.
So my interpretation of what you're saying is that in those moments of being asked to bring into communication whatever is going on, I don't like the word forces, but it invites you to consciously acknowledge it, at least to some degree, whether it's fully or whether it's just the presence of it. And that sparks the process or quickens the process of actually working through it, rather than just letting it linger internally for however long until that takes for it to clear independently.
Yeah. And I feel like a big piece of that particular interaction was ownership. It could have been so easy, maybe past patterns, to project all of the ways that I felt like you had made me feel frustrated and but also in that moment, which takes a lot of emotional intelligence and awareness to go, even if in my mind is like, you're frustrating me. It was an opportunity for me to go, I'm feeling frustrated in this moment. And it's because of an interaction that we had, and I'm just kind of sitting in that frustration right now. And I feel like the ability to own my experience is what makes our communication so effective, because had it been the other way, we could have fought, it could have blown up into something, who knows? But my ability to own my experience and hold myself in that, and also communicate that effectively, where I wasn't projecting onto you. I was just owning, this is what's happening. This is what's happening in my body, and this is where my mind is going, and this is why I feel like I want to, push away or whatever. Became very empowering for me to say that and claim that, because that was my authentic truth in the moment, and it also gave you permission to show up authentically in the moment.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for making that distinction. I feel like that's an important part of communication, where what's being communicated isn't an outward projection, but an internal reflection.
Yeah.
Going, as you said, it's the communication of truth. It's, this is my experience right now. This is what's going on in me. And I'm owning my experience, rather than pointing a finger or saying, you did this. Like that's not communication. That's accusation.
Totally.
And for me, that's such an important, valuable distinction to make. The communication is a communication of one's experience.
Yeah. And to own that. And I can see how in the past and in general, people's relationships, that can be challenging. I think that we're so used to, it's like, well, you said this thing and you hurt me. And it's like, maybe that was never your intention, was to hurt me. But what you said, I noticed, made me, triggered feelings of pain or sadness or grief. And I think that bringing my experience and owning my experience into the conversation, it allows me to hear myself out loud, which is so good for me personally. Like, as I say it out loud, I'm like, oh, okay, wait a second. I'm realizing that I'm caught in a trap, or I'm in a loop, or I'm in an old pain story. And so sometimes communication can really help that process, like what you're saying. But then, also owning that's like, okay, great. Like, you didn't do anything to me. Right? The second you do something to me, I'm a victim to you, which means I'm outsourcing my power to you.
Right. Yeah.
That's not a healthy relationship dynamic, unless I choose to do that, aka dom sub bedroom situations, but in everyday life,
Yes.
it's about like sovereignty in that way.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's like I think communication is one of the most empowering pillars and qualities that we can offer ourselves in relationship and also the other person. Because if I never communicated with you, even if you saw my nonverbal communication, if I'm huffy puffy, you can feel my energetic distance. If we don't ever give a voice to that, then that energy stays stagnant in the body and can breed resentment.
And comes out some other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inevitably.
Sure. And sorry, I was distracted by sounds.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. The importance of that, of the ownership, which is is the embodiment of sovereignty. In doing that, it prevents defensiveness because it's not an attack.
Yeah.
As soon as I go, you made me feel this way. Whoa,
yeah. Okay.
And then it becomes about defending yourself. It's like, oh, but I didn't do that. No. Whereas if I go, I feel this way because of what happened. This is my experience. How can we navigate through what I'm experiencing right now? I'm asking for your help.
Yeah.
I'm not, right?
Yeah, of course.
I'm communicating that this is going on with me and I would love your support in dealing with it. It might have been as a result of something that you did, but I know that in this union, the heart of it is love. And so anything that you did, unless it's a very unhealthy, toxic relationship, it wasn't to cause pain.
Yeah. It wasn't, yeah. It's like...
Intentionally.
Exactly. If we can move into the mindset and the belief that, okay, we are both here in love, and underneath whatever is going on the surface of the moment, that love still exists in there. The ability to come back to that and say, hey, I'm experiencing something. I know that you didn't do it intentionally, or I don't know if you did that intentionally, but I would like to bring awareness to it. Gives the other person an opportunity to reframe what's true for them, so that, let's say that it's me, can go, wow, okay, I had that totally backwards, and I recognize that that was actually just poking at a wound from a previous relationship, and like, thank you so much for the clarity, because that gives me, my mentality, and also my nervous system, I can release that. I don't have to carry that. I don't have to project that past pain is now in this relationship and wonder what's going on. And I love the opportunity for us to, continue to reframe, because of course, to some degree, there's baggage that comes into every new relationship. We can do so much work on our own, and then when we're in a deep, intimate connection with somebody else, there's a mirror to all the blind spots that have not yet been touched upon. And the ability to go like, wow, I'm experiencing this. And I know that you didn't mean anything like that, but I'm noticing that that's what's coming alive in my body, which has happened for me in our relationship. You haven't done anything, but something will strike something within me that triggers an anxious energy or something. And it's like, hey, I'm having this experience, and you haven't done anything wrong. You haven't even really done anything at all. I'm just noticing this is coming up for me today. And even in those moments, I love how you show up. That's like, thank you so much. Like, again, what do you need? And it's like, I might just need a hug. I might just want you to say something reassuring that quiets that voice, whatever it is. It gives me an opportunity to also ask for what I need in the moment.
Right. And I think that's I love that you said that, because what that points to me is the importance of part of the communication being gratitude. It's like the heart of it is love with gratitude, and then being of service in that this is a collaborative experience that we're going through. It might be your experience of ownership, but we're in this in collaboration. Thank you for bringing that to this altar of us. How can I be of service to you, to our union, in that we can work through this? I think they're like important components to bring into the conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like it'd be so easy to forget about the gratitude and how, you know, in the communication, there's a surrender to a vulnerability.
Yeah, definitely.
And being grateful to that person for being willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah, like thank you for bringing your heart. Thank you for sharing your heart and trusting me with your vulnerability in this moment. And something that I really appreciate about when we communicate or when we have something to express that might be challenging is that we both say, hey, I'm experiencing something. Do you have the capacity? Can you hold space for me for a moment?
Yeah.
Rather than just like, blah, 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 I'm having this experience, and then maybe you're in the middle of something. Yeah. You're in the middle of something and all of a sudden it disrupts your energy. Like maybe you're not in this space to actually hold space. And we've had times too where it's like, not right now, can we do this in an hour?
Yeah.
You know, my mind is like focused on something. And again, it's that permission piece that's like, hey, I'm experiencing something challenging. Do you have space? Can you hold me in this experience?
Yeah.
That also, like, for me, creates such a safety net that's like, okay, I need to be present for this.
Yes.
I need to be an active listener in this.
Yeah.
There are things that could come up, that whether they involve me or not, but to make sure that should my defenses want to come and show up, that I find some ease in this and I be proactive in whatever the experience is.
Yeah. That you have the conscious capacity to deal with what's being brought into awareness. Yeah, I love that. That's yeah, such an important part of our communications that I've really appreciated and enjoyed is the ability to go, I'm experiencing this. Do you have the capacity? Are you open to receiving
this? Are you open? I love that.
And part of that, is knowing that, and I think this is an important piece, and I think it's going to really nicely lead on to our next segue, is in saying no, you're saying yes to you.
Yeah, honoring my space and my capacity in the moment. Right.
You're not saying no to me.
Yes.
You're not saying, which is why I can receive that. I'm not receiving a rejection. I'm receiving this is what you need right now.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like that's an important part to bring up. Because I think it would be so easy to say, I'm struggling right now. Do you have space to help me? And then for you to go, not right now. That could be crushing to some people.
Of course, yeah.
Would have been crushing to me in previous
Because sometimes even asking for that is vulnerable.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, I need help. And then there's like, no, it's like, well, this is why I never ask for help.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Well, this is why I never ask for help, because I shouldn't get rejected for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I love in our dynamic is the safety around receiving a no.
Yeah, we've been so diligent about that and open, where when we do say no, it is always like, thank you for taking care of yourself. Thank you for honoring your needs in this moment. Yeah. And it's never like no forever, you know, like if you actually have a challenge, it's just like, no, not in this moment. Yes. And typically we always offer a different time that we can, is it okay if we do this in an hour? I'm about to drop into an important meeting or something. And so we always come back to it because I think the biggest piece of that is that we recognize that vulnerability, A, is sensitive, and B, also it's kind of exposing, right? So if you came to me with something that you wanted to share that was challenging, I don't want to dismiss that. Even if it had to deal with me and our relationship, there could be an avoidant part of me that's like, let's just keep saying no. Like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't have the capacity. Let's just hope that it kind of fades and goes away. While now, of course, that I'm like so deeply in the somatic field, it's like, I know that all of that would get stored and would get bottled up. And that's definitely not the experience that I want for either of us.
Sure, yeah.
And so creating a space where maybe somebody in the couple doesn't have the capacity and be like, no, not right now. You can state why, but you don't have to. Like, I don't have to create an excuse for my no. But sometimes it's helpful.
I think that's such a valid point. Is
Like, I don't have to defend my no.
you don't have to defend your no.
Ever.
No. You have your reasons. I can agree with them or not,
Yeah.
but I can respect them.
Yeah.
Like, whether or not I agree with them is irrespective. It doesn't matter, because I choose to respect your sovereignty of a no.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that in saying no, you're saying yes to you, and how important that is to respect that.
Yeah, and how important it is for the person who's on the receiving end to actually tune in and go, do I have the emotional capacity or mental capacity right now to get into a discussion?
Yeah.
And I think this is also a great piece of communication, is I can ask, okay, what's it about? You know, because then
Right.
if it's about us, I
Right.
know that I want to dedicate more time. And so if I don't have enough
Yeah.
time or bandwidth at the moment, I will create space for it later. But if it's about, let's say it's about something else, it's like, hey, I know I actually just having something challenging personally, and I would
Yeah.
love to soundboard off of you. It's like, okay, great. After I get off this call,
Yeah.
let's drop into it. It just gives me a chance to really tune in and go,
Yeah.
where am I at? What do I actually feel like I have to offer? If I don't have anything to offer, what do I need to give myself so I'm open and receptive to this conversation?
Yeah, and how much is being required of me in this conversation?
Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Because sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes you just want to be heard.
Yeah.
Other times it's like, hey, we actually need to drop into a little bit of work here together and
Yeah.
tackle this. And this could take an hour. This could take a couple hours. We might need to take space during it. We might not.
Yeah. And I love that. And for me, what that speaks into is boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah. Boundaries in relationship.
Right. Yeah. Because in that moment, you're expressing a boundary of a no, which is a yes to you, and I'm honoring that boundary,
Yeah.
respecting and honoring it. And I feel like this is why conversations around boundaries is important. It's a part of communication.
Yeah. I love to, there's so many ways to express boundaries. I mean, I used to talk
Please.
about this in, when we would do our events in Guatemala at Sultry, we always talked about consent at the beginning, because a lot of people would come. A lot of our music was like sensual down-tempo bass, so it's a lot of lower chakra, very sexy. And
Yum.
our community is so delicious. Oh my God, those nights were so hot. And our community loved to contact dance. And so if you were new to the community, you might see, whoa, all these people are like slowly grinding on each other and having a good time. And they would, without having proper knowledge, they would go in and try to do the same thing. And so we would talk about boundaries. And one of the things I was like, look, there's a couple different ways that you can express your no. The tried and true and most effective way, if you feel empowered enough, is to say no.
Right.
So just say the words no. Or say no, thank you.
No, thank
We
you.
talked about doing like the bow.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, but no.
Yeah.
Different ways to express that. And even in relationship, it's the same. Like if you come to me and you ask something, I could just say no. Most of the time I don't. I inform you of what's happening in my field so you're aware and we can adjust accordingly. But also, provided I'm not in a mood or something like that, when I'm approached by somebody that has an offer or wants to say something to me and I don't have the capacity, I'm like, well, thank you so much for thinking of me. Now it's just like not a good time. And I like to do it in that way that's like, hey, I appreciate you coming to me. Like, wow, thank you so much for thinking of me in this moment or wanting to come to me in this moment. And also, this is a no for me right now.
Yeah.
Because it also helps whatever we can do to soften the rejection story.
Right, yeah.
Because so many people are attached to the rejection wound.
Fear of
It's
rejection.
massive.
Yeah.
Men and
I've
women
been there.
both.
Yeah, I've been
totally. And to not take it personal, I feel like there are so many beautiful ways that we can effectively communicate our no, that offer the appreciation and offer the gratitude.
Yeah.
And granted, at some point, maybe if there's like a repeat offender, right, then the hard no is like, hey, no.
You're not hearing me.
Yeah, you're not hearing me. I don't feel like you're respecting me.
Yeah.
Which is also a very empowering place to be, is to stand for that. Like, offer it in love. And if that person is just not receptive and not getting the message, then stand in your warrior that's like, hey.
Well, I think it's really interesting. I mean, there's so many tangents that I could go on there. But one of the things that's really interesting is I think there's a conversation we're going to have around consent. But how in society, I don't know, guys have shown the priming of pushing a no.
Yeah, we've had several discussions about
Right.
this. Yeah,
And also how women sometimes say no but mean yes, or can do. And it's like, it's an interesting, for some reason, guys like to push no's, and for some reason, sometimes girls like to say no when it's like, no.
like cat and mouse.
Right, yeah.
You know?
And that's murky.
That's for me is like shadow dancing. We talked a little bit about shadow dancing
Yes.
this morning, where it's like, okay, this woman has expressed her no, but I want to see how true that no really is, and
Yeah.
if I can get in there. And that energy is so shadow, it's very egoic, rather than like, oh, okay. Because also when somebody says no, for me, like if I don't want to be in a relationship, let's say for instance, I didn't want to be in a relationship with you, right? And I say no, that doesn't cut off all the energy and potential connection we could have in the infinite of other ways. It actually creates a container for us to explore other potential ways of relating. So
Defines
it's like, okay,
boundaries.
yeah. So it's like, okay, now that I've taken relationship or sex off the table,
yeah.
there's so much freedom to, even for me, like in my friendly connections, to be in sensual play. Like I cuddle my friends and my friends cuddle me. It took me a long time to get there, but I do that now because like, no. So now I feel safe to drop into that space because this person's not seeing me as a potential girlfriend. They're now seeing me, I've moved into the sister zone. It's like, okay, you're a divine sister. I respect you. I love you. I don't feel like I'm going to be pressured into anything, and they don't feel the same energy from me.
I feel like in order to do that, it requires you to be very affirmed in your boundaries and in your sovereignty. Like
I can't be wishy-washy.
Right,
no,
yeah.
I don't know.
But there's
maybe.
no room for you to drop into this is my boundary and then break that, because then you lose all sovereignty and credibility in your communication.
Totally.
So yeah, that's I feel like that's important to the boundary thing. Such an integral part of the communication.
Yeah, and just even the awareness that we can have boundaries in a relationship. You know, this really gives us space to step out of the people-pleasing martyr roles that maybe we've adopted in an effort to maintain love, feel love, maintain security. I think there's a lot of people out there who feel afraid to express their no out of fear that there's going to be some repercussion or consequence for not offering their partner the thing that they desire.
Well, this is why the reframe for me was so helpful. Like from my personal point of view, like taking your communication out of it, and I think that's an important part to make. Like, yes, there is an empowerment piece in the way you communicate a no, and there is an empowerment piece in the way that I'm able to receive a no, regardless of how it's communicated.
Exactly.
And the combination of the two, I feel, is what makes the most empowerment. Your ability, or my ability, to communicate a no in a loving, compassionate, grateful way, and my or your ability to receive a no in a way that doesn't make me feel rejected or hurt or bad or anything negative.
Or wrong for even asking, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a part of that is something you actually did in action, which is the thank you and. It's not a thank you but, it's a thank you and.
Yeah, I've really tried to cut the butts out of my conversations.
We both have, and I notice when we
catch it.
We catch it,
We
and
do
I
so
love
good.
that. Yeah. But and why is that important for you?
Because for me, anytime I say something and then there's a but after, it totally negates everything I said at the beginning. So it's like, thank you, but I'm a no.
Yeah.
It's like, well, then I'm not
really
that thank you is not really there,
Yeah.
right? But if I thank you so much and I'm just not available at this moment, the but just like curbs everything in that regard. And so I've worked very, very hard to actually cut that out of my
I feel that, because I'm so grateful for it, and I'm grateful for the continued desire to do that, because I notice when you catch yourself and you change
I
your
catch
butt.
myself every time.
Right, yeah.
So good.
Yeah. I think it's amazing. And like, I'm aware of that, and I do it myself sometimes.
Yeah.
And I love that that's a part of the way we communicate. Because it feels exactly what you spoke into, of it, there's not a negation there. And I wonder how many people consciously do that in their communications, either with themselves or in partnership.
I mean, once I started changing it and I would catch myself in it, I was like, whoa, I do this all the time, especially in relationship. It's like, well, thank you for doing that, but blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, oh, okay, all that
It's
gratitude just went, out the
Yeah.
window. And I was like, wow, I just like cut so often without even recognizing that I was being cutting or that I was being, defensive.
You got a lot of butt.
So much butt.
So much butt.
So much butt.
So much butt.
I couldn't even handle it, and I'm starting to manage it.
Thank you for handling your butt.
You're so welcome.
I'm so
You're lucky that I'm handling my butt as well
I'm
as I do.
grateful for the handling of butt in this relationship.
Me too. There's so much handling here. I'm trying to see if there's anything else that I feel like we've missed around communication.
Desires.
We talked about boundaries. I mean,
talked
fears
about
can be
boundaries.
expressed in the same way, and also it's another vulnerability that's like, I feel, at least what works, I know works for us is, hey, I'm having an experience and I'm having a fear come up. And how a person communicates this totally depends on their emotional awareness. I'm so dropped in to my body and my emotions that I very effectively communicate what's happening. Like, I have a fear. I'm noticing that I'm not feeling secure. I notice that I'm feeling shifty in my stomach, that my heart rate is increased, something's happening here. And the story that I have playing in my mind is that blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And that's how I communicate my fears. And it's important for me, or I've learned how important it is for me, to express myself in a loving and compassionate way, even for myself. Because if I get triggered, sometimes it can be easy to get caught in my own self-shame cycle. It's like, well, I didn't bring it up because da 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 da. Or, I don't know, whatever the murky energy is.
Right.
And so a piece that I want to leave as like maybe a takeaway when we're expressing more vulnerable things is, in those moments of expression, recognizing, okay, yes, this is vulnerable for me, and it feels exposing to be sharing this with my partner when I don't know how this is going to impact them, because we also think about that, the impact of what we share and say can matters. And also having this very loving and compassionate piece towards myself that goes, hey girl, wow, you're about to express like a really deep fear, and emotions might come up, and this fear might even challenge my partner in some way. And pouring that love and that energy back into myself so that I can have the most effective conversation possible is very, very important for me. And so I wanted to state that as a note for listeners, that that also is a piece of the communication, is like really loving ourselves in the communication, and also maybe the after effects of the communication.
Yeah, really loving yourself in that communication. And in choosing to communicate that vulnerability, there's a trust that you're putting in me that I am sovereign enough to be able to receive that communication. Like when you're saying the implications of your communication, what it means for me, you're going, I appreciate that it will impact you, and I trust that you're able to hold that.
And I mean, I do my best, just to speak personally, I do my best to ensure that no matter what I'm expressing, I'm doing so with love and compassion. And I recognize that there won't always be those moments. There might be an instance where reactivity gets the best of me at some point, inevitably.
Yeah.
And knowing that, okay, that's going to create an impact. You're going to receive that a certain type of way because of how I choose to show up, and that creates like a ripple effect and a mirrored effect that has impact. And so also just recognizing the impact that our words can carry and can have, on our intimate partnerships, and just using that wisdom and that knowledge to do the inner work, so that when I do need to show up with something, I'm doing my absolute best to make sure that I'm showing up from a place of love for myself and also for you. And of course, that's maybe not always possible, but there's a lot of value, and there's a lot of value in striving for that to be how I show up. Otherwise, I could just show up super reactionary and go, I'm not responsible for how you take this. Like, eat it.
Right.
Great. Like, do that. And then wonder why now you've got a bad attitude towards me.
That's kind of like the spiritual bypass, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm expressing myself. Take it
Yeah.
or leave it. Here
Yeah.
you go.
Uh-huh.
On you. Okay,
Right.
great. I feel expressed.
That's your
awesome.
stuff now. Oh,
yeah.
you
now
can
go
receive
process
that? That's on you.
Yeah.
I'm being honest. If you can't receive that, that's your...
Totally.
Right.
And there's like a lack of responsibility that shows up in that space. That's, I'm not taking responsibility for how what I share might impact you. Am I actually responsible for how you receive it? Totally not.
No.
Totally not. You've got your own internal world and dialogue
Yeah.
happening that could create any type of
Right.
story.
And in doing that, you're playing your role in being as responsible as you can be
Exactly.
in the communication. I love that.
And that's important to me.
Why?
I think every couple has seen when reactivity has gotten the best of them, and it's not an amazing feeling. The tension, the energy, the resentment, the blood boiling, the lingering of those sensations, it's so much work to get back to a place of love when
Right.
reactionary responses take over. And what I have found in all of my more recent relationships, and especially ours, is that when I can ground myself and tune into love and compassion and understand the impact of what I'm sharing might also impact you, and communicate to the best of my ability with my emotional intelligence and awareness of what's happening, and I own my experience, the conversations go so much smoother. Even if there is challenge, there's so much more ease there, because there's no finger pointing, there's no projection, there's no nasty tone of voice, there's none of that that's happening. It's like, this is me, myself, and I. This is what I'm experiencing. I recognize that this might also be challenging for you, and I'm coming to you because I want to bring it to the altar of us.
Right. It's grounded in love and sovereignty.
And that's an amazing base and space to be able to have those more challenging conversations. Because however you choose to respond, I can stay grounded in that. I can stay grounded in myself. That's like, okay, even if you react negatively, I can hold that. I can hold it down for myself. And potentially, let's say if you have a negative reaction, it's like, hey, that's not actually where I'm coming from. And can we have this dialogue? And I understand, wow, this has an impact on you. And let's talk about that, right?
Yes. And what came up for me there was how good that is, and how challenging that can be when you're not met in groundedness and sovereignty.
Oh, it's so hard. Oh my gosh, it's a one-way street, right? The conversation becomes one way, and that's when the defenses inevitably will start to come up. It's like, okay, clearly you're not hearing me, and you're having a hard time, and you're in your own experience. And even in some conversations, I want to just point this out, there is still opportunity to then show up in your boundary that goes, look, I actually feel like you're not receiving me. Maybe this isn't the right time and place. So I'm going to take a sacred pause and honor myself and my needs, and say we revisit this at another time. There is so much sovereignty and empowerment, and going, this conversation has no longer been effective.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe we need to take space.
Yeah, because in that instance, you're coming with this this desire to express your experience. Like, this is what's going on for me, and I want to communicate this, and I'm asking you to join me in this process. And if it's not met with sovereignty and groundedness, your problem, I make my issue. Like, it stops being about whatever was going on in you, and becomes about the way that I'm receiving it.
Which means you're no longer holding space.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. So I think that's like as great as it is to know that my reaction doesn't affect your groundedness and sovereignty, how important it is in the nurturance of the union and the healing of whatever's being brought up, how useful and necessary it is to be met with groundedness and sovereignty. Yeah, I think that's
so important.
Go on.
I was just going to say the last thing I feel like I want to touch on quite quickly is just like how we express our desires.
Yeah.
And this is like in the bedroom, this is in general, but I mean, we pretty much use the same statement. I feel like I'm going to question. We pretty much use the same statement.
Yeah.
But
Before we move on to that, I just wanted to make a last point around what we were talking about is when a problem, or not a problem, when a communication is brought in, and this has been my challenge in previous relationships, is how easy it is to drop into the role of the fixer rather than stay in the role of the supporter of, okay, thank you for bringing that into this altar space. How can I be of service? Rather than, okay, what do we do to fix it?
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring that into the conversation.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's important.
And I feel like those questions, like, what do you need right now, gives the power back to the person who's having the experience. And if we want it to be a collaborative effort, amazing. If it just puts the power back in your hands, it's like, what do you need to do for yourself? How can you self-resource? That's also amazing too.
Yeah, because in bringing the communication, it's not that you necessarily need anything. It's just that it's an opportunity to communicate something. It's not asking for a solution or for anything to be fixed. It's just, I want to share this with you.
Yeah, it's just an expression. I need to get this off my chest.
Yeah. What do you need right now? Well, just a hug.
Yeah.
That's it.
Sometimes it's like, thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank
to
you.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because sometimes we find our solution in the expression of it out loud. Like, how many times has that happened to me where I was like, wow, okay, actually don't need, thank you for listening to me.
Well, this is very tantric and very tantric therapy. It's like the solution's there. It just needed percolating and being expressed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I just wanted to quickly bring that in before we move on to what you're saying about the communications and in the bedroom and
just desires. Like how to. So many times we've posted these polls around like, what are your struggles in conscious intimacy? And often what we get in feedback is people struggling to ask for their desires in and out of the bedroom. So let's say the desire is space. For whatever reason, they want spaciousness, you know, they want their sovereignty back, essentially. How do I express that in an effective way that doesn't hurt the person's feelings? Or how do I express that I have a desire in the bedroom that seems kinky or seems a bit out there, or just expressions of desire in general? Because it's so quick, it's so easy, for sex to just like be this monotonous mechanical thing, like goes into bedroom, takes off clothes, does position 1, does position 2, does position 3, finishes, cuddle for a second, goes about our day.
That sounds great.
So boring. I'd rather chew on fire. I would like, oh God. I was trying to think of, there were so many different things in my mind. I was like, I'd rather eat crickets. I'd rather chew on fire. I'd rather die.
It's very masculine, mechanical.
Terrible. Yeah, like right on schedule. Perfect. He's going to flip me over in about 30 seconds. Oh, right on time. Okay, great.
Okay, we're on track. We're on track. This is good.
Death to every sexual connection that is like that. I pray upon better sex life for everyone out there.
Just a quick caveat. Yeah. Find the feminine play in the masculine penetration. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on.
That could be a whole download.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, so like we do this all the time. This is like, even since we first started dating, this is like, hey, like, I have a desire. And I love that. That's our go-to. It could be anything. Like,
Yes.
you're like, hey, I have a desire. It's like, what? To cook dinner together and then watch a movie, right? That's not sexual, but it's like owning the fact that this is something that you would like. You put it on offer. And I can respond however I want to.
Right.
And also in the bedroom, it's like, hey, I have a desire. When we're in the bedroom space particularly, that activates me so much. Whether you whisper it, whether you claim it, it activates my body because it's like, ooh, what's here?
Yeah. Wait, yeah, I love it. I think it's a very, I'm going to say masculine attribute of expression of, it's like penetrating my will into the world.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's a claiming that happens there.
Yeah.
That, you know, feminine polarity loves. It's like, ooh, tell me what you want.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you if I'm receptive to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And creating that space. And yeah, for me in particular, engaging in our desires in that way, it doesn't matter what you ask for. You could ask for the lamest thing at the end of that. It's like, I desire to go. Actually, nothing you can do is lame. But let's say it's like, oh, I desire to go for a walk or whatever. Even just you still saying the desire would have me perk up. It's like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Because I feel excited to offer that to you. And it's like, okay, if we're going for a walk or if it's like paddling me in the bedroom, I get excited. I feel how my body becomes activated at the expressions of your desire. And also my permission to express my desires.
I feel like part of that is in expressing a desire. Part of that, I feel like what part of that activation is for you is because you're recognizing that I'm taking a risk. And that's bold.
Yeah.
I am risking
so
rejection.
Bold. Yeah.
And it's like I have the sovereignty, the strength, the willpower to risk this. And I know that that's okay.
And also in like some, I don't know, maybe kinky sadistic way, I feel empowered. I feel my power. It's like I have the power to decide if this desire actually comes to fruition or not.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah. It's playing with the polarities. In an expression of desire, I'm sitting in my masculine, but then I'm empowering you, which is, you know, in your masculine to say yes, say no, and then to receive that desire. Like and then I'm sitting in receptivity of being rejected.
You have to wait for my response,
right,
you know? It's like,
so it's a very like powerful, potent interplay of polarity.
Totally. It's a power dynamic.
Right, absolutely. And I feel the reason so many people struggle with it is because of that fear of rejection.
Yeah. Yeah.
That fear of, I don't want to express a desire because that person might say no. It's like, yeah, they might. And they might say yes.
And there's eroticism in that. There can, if you can find the eroticism in that, like, oh, it could be a yes or it could be a no, and in that sensation, there's so much eros to be explored.
Yes.
There.
Yeah. You're playing in that.
Yeah.
And
I could drag out my answers. Like, thank you for stating your desire. I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah.
And I could play with that all day if I wanted to. Ladies, we can play with that all day. Especially if you know it's going to be a yes. You could tease this man all day and just let that eros build up.
Well, absolutely. Oh. And the other way around, you know.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
I express a desire and you say yes. Like, great. Well, maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Yeah, I know. And I'm like, what? That's so rude. I'm like, you wouldn't. You wouldn't. You're like, maybe I will, maybe I won't. And then I'm just like dripping. I'm like, when is it coming? I want it so bad right now. And that's like where the playful, erotic buildup can come from.
Yeah.
And whether we do it or not, just being in that energy is so beneficial.
Yeah. And that comes from the empowerment of being willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Being willing to be rejected and the strength of being able to receive that.
Yeah.
And it speaks into, and like part of the reason I love our expression of desires is because I feel sovereign in it. I feel safe to communicate. I know the communication's there. There's so much trust. There's so much play. There's empathy in it. Like all of those pillars are there in that expression and reception of desire.
Yeah.
And it's because all of that is there that being able to express desires is so wonderful.
It's so fun.
Yeah.
And it's so edgy.
I mean, like, one of the first things, like, one of the reasons this is here is because I expressed a desire to kiss you. Like,
Yeah, and you brought awareness, like, hey, I'm noticing what feels like chemistry between us, and there's this spark, and I have a desire to explore that.
yeah.
And I was so grateful that you said that, because not only was I experiencing the same energy, but you bringing it to light opened up space for the conversation.
Right.
To just like get clear on what's happening here.
Yeah.
I didn't have to guess. I didn't have to wonder, are you into me? Are you not?
Yeah. I didn't have to try and be like, oh, I want to kiss her. How do I like kiss her? Oh, I should just like lunge and like, you know,
Just go for it.
imply that, or, you know, there's this implication that it's okay to do it because
You're picking up on
I'm
signals.
picking up on signals. It's like, no, I'm
You
gonna.
know, that's not always the case.
Right. Yeah. Other conversation to have. In the expression of a desire, I was able to make explicit and have this open, honest dialogue and claim and know that it was being received. It empowered me to take action.
Yeah.
Because it
I
gave you
opened up.
permission. It gave you permission.
Yeah. I opened up when you asked that. I was like, I could feel myself relax, because there's times where, things are getting hot, and being in the energy of like, what is this? You know, my feminine mind's like, what's happening here? Okay, clearly he's into me, but like, what's that about? You know, the mind goes so many places in that moment, and it created an open channel to then tune in, which I did, and I very honestly shared what was alive for me in the moment, which had some hesitation.
Sure.
And it gave
Rightly
me space to express that.
Yeah.
And again, what that created was even more openness for then us to explore that space.
Yeah, and for me, like, to round this all up, the expression of desire, the communication in general, is it's a direct line to truth.
I love that.
And the invitation to explore truth. And that's at the heart of that.
And consistent communication gives space for when and if that truth changes.
Yes.
There's no solid yes or no. Things are always changing. Things are allowed to change. So what was a boundary one day might not be the next day.
Yeah.
And the ability to communicate that from a heart-centered, clear space, or sometimes unclear, but as long as it's rooted in the heart, it creates that, it becomes a two-way dialogue. And two-way dialogue will inevitably, when rooted in the right intention, always create safety. Whether it's in friendship, whether it's in our family dynamics, or it's in our intimate partnerships.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's a gateway to my heart and to my experience and to what is alive in me in the moment. When you can hold it for me, not only do I feel safe, but I feel heard, I feel seen. And then if it is a dialogue that we then share back and forth, I also feel supported. That's really what I feel like so many relationships out there are really deeply craving. And maybe there's an avenue somewhere in there, or all of it is missing, because either people aren't feeling educated enough or don't know how to communicate themselves effectively. And I feel like even these podcasts are exactly what we're aiming to do, is show other ways of relating that create a stronger support system, not just for the individual, but also for the unit.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like.
Sovereignty and union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way that you communicate with me.
Thank you. I received that, and I'm grateful for that, and I love the way that you communicate with me.
Thank you for sharing your heart through your words and your nonverbal communication. We're so attuned, so that there's nowhere for either of us to hide in this relationship. We know when something's, we know when
So
something's
true.
off. I mean, I do this thing. This is just like for everybody listening, where when I notice you're off, I'm like, hey, you're not with me.
Yeah.
And I'll snap. I'm like, where are you?
Yeah.
Because you're not here. Yeah, come back. Like,
Come back.
what do you need to come back to your heart? Or vice versa. And I've become what felt edgy at the beginning of our relationship. Now I'm so grateful for, because it's like, I might not even realize that I'm in that space. Because I'm just off in the distance. I'm off in whatever's happening in my mental realm. And then when you bring me back, it's like, okay. And then I notice that and I go, okay. I ask myself the same question internally. What do I need to come back to the heart? It's like, okay, I need to share this.
Yeah.
You have space for this. And that's how we communicate.
Yeah. Love that. I feel complete.
I feel complete with that too.
Amazing.
What an epic conversation.
Yeah. Thank you for exploring that with me.
Thank you. I love your mouth.
I love
communication and beyond.